wait. The best piece of advice that I've been given is to be patient with myself and with the things that I hope for.
Hello and welcome to the Ndini podcast. I'm Sandra Chuma. Every week, I'm bringing you conversations with bold, inspiring, trailblazing, and influential women of African descent. These are women from all walks of life, women who are entrepreneurs, artists, social activists, athletes. Each one of them, in their own way, is changing the narrative on what it means to be an African woman. They'll be telling us about their journeys and sharing their secrets to success. And I hope that by hearing their inspiring stories, you will be inspired. Hey, Eposi, it's Sandra. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
I'm so excited to be talking to you. Why don't we start with you telling me, tell me your name, where you're from, and what it is you do.
My name is Eposi Litumbe, and I was born in Cameroon, and I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, where I spent most of my life, and I now live in San Diego, California. By day, I work in biotechnology. That's how I earn my living. And what started out as a hobby and has slowly been getting traction in my life is just basically documenting my travels around the world. And I tend to focus more on the continent of Africa, mostly because I think one day in my young adult life, I thought to myself, I want to do something for myself that's just something I've never thought to do before, but something that's true to who I am. And I just remember that when I first moved to the United States, I was like maybe 12, 13 years old. And I was in high school, and people would ask me questions like, so did you live in a tree? Or, did you have a pet tiger? I was like, no, I did not live in a tree, and tigers are from Asia, and I would get so annoyed. I get so annoyed by some of these questions. And I think that had a lot to do with my youthful immaturity. And as time went on, I started to realize that it's not necessarily that people don't care or that people don't really bother. It's just because when people have been bombarded with like all of these images of a certain place, you can't blame them for having a certain perception. Now, as for myself, I thought to myself, well, when people ask me questions that I do think are intelligent questions, and I don't know the answer to them, that's kind of a shame. I was like, I know more about American history and European history than I do about Cameroonian history than where I was born, or other countries around the continent of Africa. And I just really had the desire to learn more. I'm not a historian. I'm not a paleontologist or an archaeologist or anything like that. I'm just a very curious person, and I just wanted to know. So I just started to document my travels to show what I was discovering as I was discovering it, or learning as I was learning it.
So let's actually go back to how did you even get started? So you talked about, obviously you take the most beautiful photos. You also do a lot of video. How did you get started in photo and video?
Well, with photography and video, it was just kind of playing around and honestly, trying to look at pictures that I really admire and seeing how either I could expand on it, like putting my own personality into it, and just honestly trial and error. Sometimes I feel like I take really great pictures, other times I don't. And I have other family members who are excellent photographers, and it always, always, always helps to get wonderful tips from them, and seeing how they do things and learning from it. But then when I take my own pictures, having my own spin on things. And as far as film, when I was in college, I worked as a stunt performer in feature films. So I was on set a lot during that time, and I had the opportunity, this was more of an acting opportunity with some filmmakers. And so I got to see how things were done from conception all the way to finality. And I started to realize that I had a lot more interest in being behind the camera and, just trying to get something from an idea to actuality.
Now, you casually dropped in there, I was a stunt performer. How does someone become a stunt performer?
Well, that in and of itself is its own story. So, when I was bullied in high school, and I wanted to learn how to defend myself, but obviously I wanted to learn. I was trying to learn how to defend myself when I got to college, and I started taking martial arts, and I went to a school of martial arts. So it wasn't like a rinky-dink class, or not to say that there are, rinky-dink classes running around. I don't want to disrespect anyone's practice, but I didn't just do like, it wasn't like a side, thing every now and then or every 2 weeks. Like I went to a school of martial arts and studied there while I was in college. And the head instructor at our school also happened to be a stunt coordinator for feature films in the area. And so one day he said, I really think you should try this and you should see, because I think you'd be good for it. I think you'd do well. And I just was like, I'm African. I don't know how I'm going to walk up to my parents and be like, I've decided to be a stunt woman, when they're like, why are you not going to school to be a doctor? And so I said no at first. And then he said, just come to a practice. Just come and check it out and see, just see. And I was like, okay, because I had a lot of respect for the guy. And I just thought, it couldn't hurt to just go and see. So I went. And as I was walking in the door, one of the guys was doing one of the jumps. And he was jumping off part of the second story building onto one of the foam mats, like these really thick, heavy foam mat. And I just watched him like jump. I'm like, you guys do this for work? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I am in. And so I did it for a couple of 2 or 3 years before I went full time into some of the stuff that I'm doing now.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that you're doing now. You mentioned at the top of the interview that your regular day job is it in biotech?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I work in clinical research. So while I was going to school and doing martial arts, and then eventually, working as a stunt woman, I went to school for biology and chemistry, and I'd actually already resolved, because I'd gotten a lot of feedback. People saying, you know what? A lot of the time you go to college for one thing and you end up working in something completely different. That happens to most people. So don't necessarily expect that you'll work in what you went to school for. And I guess I'm one of the few people who actually works in what they went to school for. I work in clinical research, and it's basically pharmaceuticals and working in drug development. So after drugs have gone through the preclinical phase, what I do is coming in when they're going to test the drugs on people, which is a very regulated process. And I used to work on the side of the people who run the trials, and now I work from the side of the pharmaceutical company.
And do you enjoy that work? Like, what are some of the things that you really enjoy about your job?
I do. I think, something that I'd always wanted was to spend some part of my life doing something that I felt like would help society as a whole. And, right now in my current job, I'm working on a pharmaceutical or a drug that is going to help people with lupus or help people with rheumatoid arthritis. And, it just means a lot to me to know that if, I stay consistent and do decent work, I can really help impact the quality of life of people whose quality of life right now is not the best because of this autoimmune disease that they're really struggling with. I'm not a physician, and I don't work in a lab. Like I said, I work from the pharmaceutical company side. And it's just essentially managing projects from a different side of things.
Now, you're probably, I'm going to hazard a guess, one of very few women, and probably very few women of color who are doing the kind of work that you do. Like, tell me about what it's like being a woman and a woman of color in the industry.
When I first started with that particular role, I was very, very happy to see that there are actually quite a few women of color and women in general from the side of clinical research organizations who manage projects from that side, and who do really well for themselves, actually. And my mentor, when I began, was she was a woman of color, and she told me all about the the role. And, because like I mentioned before, I was born in Cameroon, and, it's interesting because it wasn't my parents imposing this on me. I was imposing it on myself. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do this. Not realizing, there's certain things you have to find what fits you. You can't just do things because, that's what everybody thinks is really great, or that's what seems like the thing to do, or that will seem to get you the respect. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that I was more so drawn by the respect that doctors get and the prestige that comes along with it. What I didn't realize, and I'm very, very grateful because I had a lot of really wonderful women of color in my life who kind of paved the way and did really amazing things, who essentially ushered me into the industry and told me, listen, this is what you do and this is how you do it. And honestly, just guided me through the process. And the kind of work that I do now is a little bit different. And they're in my company, for example, it's a relatively small company, and it, interestingly enough, also is quite diverse. I am the only Black person at my company, but I'm really impressed with how not only do they look for talented people, they make the effort to hire people from different backgrounds. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted to work at this particular company. But I think I've had different experiences where I was the only person of color, and it was not necessarily the best experience in some companies versus other places where it has been such a wonderful experience because people hold my particular perspective in high regard, asking me questions from my perspective and valuing that perspective. So, depending on where you go, depending on where you land, it can be a different experience.
What advice would you give to, a young girl of color who's thinking about a career in STEM, so in science, technology, engineering, or
Correct.
math? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely do it. Because when I was younger, I was convinced I wanted to be a model. And again, there's some people who they're built for that. And that is the thing that they need to do. And they excel at it. And they make everybody else so happy that they decided to do that. For me, that was not the case. It was not my calling. And I remember once I was trying to get counsel from a woman who had done really well as a model. And she said, well, consider all the things that you like to do and do the thing that makes you happy. And eventually it took a little bit of time. It wasn't immediate. It took me a little bit of time. And I learned that while being a doctor was not necessarily for me, or being a nurse was not for me, obviously there are people who that is for, and you will excel and you will do well. You just have to find what your strengths are, find out what the things that you enjoy are, and find a way to combine those things. And don't only rely on counsel from your school. Your school is there to be a support system, but don't just rely on their information. Go out. Do the research, look around. What are different roles that you can do with different degrees? What are different roles that you can do with the things that you're interested in? Because I did not know when I graduated college that there were other things I could do with the degree that I had. I thought that I was going to be limited to certain roles until I stopped complaining and I stopped being angry at the world, and I started looking around like, okay, what's available to me? Getting to know people on a genuine level, getting to speak to people and being genuinely interested in what they had to say and their perspective, like no agenda, just, hey, my name is Eposi and I want to get to know you because you're sitting right here and we might as well get to know each other, And that was genuinely how I met my mentor, just being interested in other people and what was going on with them and what was going on in their lives, and just being as kind and genuine to people as you can. Because one, then you can live with yourself. But then two, oftentimes people remember that about you. They remember that about you, and they remember that you didn't want anything from them, but you were kind because that's who you are. Or that's who you aspire to be. You don't have to be a perfect person, but, trying your best to be the best version of yourself and not relying on things that are in front of you and seeking that information out and then matching what you're interested in and your skills. And if you don't have those skills, it's okay. You can work towards that. So that's, I hope that's helpful.
And what would you say? So, I mean, it sounds like you've been fortunate in that you've met some great people along the way. You've had some great
Yeah.
mentors. What would you say has been your biggest challenge or your most valuable failure?
My most valuable failure was not getting into medical school or not getting into MD medical school. Oh gosh. Honestly, now that I think about it, there's so many. I failed at so many things. And, and it's okay to say that because just because you're not successful in one area doesn't mean you won't be in another area. Because while I experienced profound failures in some areas, I've also found equal success and joy in others. I mean, I think about, not getting into medical school, which was a huge blessing because I would have been a horrible doctor. Um, Sometimes, not getting the thing that you really, really think that you really, really want is a huge blessing because there are things that you don't see that are not a good fit for you and the things that you want in your life, that not getting those things or not getting those things in that moment is actually protecting you from a world of misery. And so essentially the lesson that I learned from my many failures is it's okay. It's okay to fail. Just don't bask in that failure. Just don't sit in that failure and think that the world is over. And it's human. It's human to feel like, oh my God, the world is ending, or however it is that you end up feeling in that moment. But get up and keep going and try again or try something else. And it's going to be okay.
That is amazing advice. What would you say has been the single best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Wow. Wait. The best piece of advice that I've been given is to be patient with myself and with the things that I hope for. Because it's always better to wait, at least in my experience and in listening to that advice, it's been better to wait for the things that I want than to try to rush through or to try to force situations because I think I'm getting what I want, and then it just ends up being a huge mess versus just waiting. And in that waiting, preparing. So waiting should be an active process. You're not just sitting on a chair and just looking out the window. You are preparing, you are working towards, you are hoping for, but you're putting action behind your hope so that when the opportunity does come around for you to take advantage of it, you are ready, you are prepared. The only thing that you need is that opportunity to show your stuff.
Oh, preach. Preach. Speaking of opportunity to show your stuff, I obviously follow you on social media, and I read something that you had posted about you doing exactly that, where you'd approached a company, I think, to do a short advert for them, and then you took it upon yourself to do it by yourself. Tell us the story.
There are actually a few like that. Somewhere that has worked out in my favor, and others where it hasn't. More times than not, it has not. The first time I ever tried that was for a company called Heli Air Monaco in Monaco in Southern Europe. And I was going on a work trip for my family, and I was tagging, with my parents, and I was just kind of tagging along. And I saw in the itinerary that one of the perks of going on this conference was that there was a free helicopter if you signed up for it that would take you from Nice, France into Monaco. And I'd never been in a helicopter before. It never occurred to me that I would ever get the opportunity to be in it. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm definitely not going to waste this opportunity. So I bought myself a professional camera and I started practicing months and months and months before on how I was going to shoot this video. What am I going to do? What ideas am I going to use? So that by the time I got there, I'd be obviously I'm not going to become, an award-winning cinematographer in only a few weeks or only a few months, but I would have something, something of value to be able to give. And so I got there and I basically filmed the experience of being on their helicopter. And I produced a very, not when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, that was terrible. But I produced a short video. And after my trip, I just went on the company website. I looked for the contact us information and I wrote them a small letter, and I said, hey, I really like your company, and I took it upon myself to create an advert for you. So here it is. I hope you like it. Next thing I know, the president of that company sends me an email and was like, I love this. And thank you for shooting it. Let me know the next time that you're here, and we will give you all the resources that we can and access to any of, I don't know the next time I'm going to go to Monaco or be able to just afford to go there. But it was just amazing to see what was possible. On the other hand, which I think is equally as important to hear, are the times when I've done that and failed tragically, where, I may have entered a competition, or I made a short for someone, just they didn't ask me for it. I just did it because I really, really wanted to, and for the joy of doing it. And, especially for the competitions, for example, where, I twice now I've entered competitions and again, not won or just failed, where what I did afterwards is, I took it to the chin, but I went back and I watched the people who won. I watched the work that they did. And every time I was like, you know what? That person deserved to win. But then I also took notes on what they did differently than what I did, so that I could hopefully improve the next time I made a video, so that it could be more of something that can impact a person watching it. Not necessarily because I need to be the winner, I need to be number one, but the point of it all is to grow and to develop, right? I mean, I hope that someday I do win something or excel, but you only excel when you grow and when you accept that, you know what, this could have been better in this way or in that way.
You have an incredible attitude. Where does that come from?
I think that comes from an extended period of being in a humble situation and then realizing that you cannot expect other people to make you happy. Your happiness has to come from within. I think it's important to see things as they are, to see the reality, but then to choose to be positive about that reality and to choose to see the bright side, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're left alone with your own thoughts. And I would rather have pleasant thoughts than horrible, like self-deprecating or doomsday or thoughts that pitch me as competing with other people, when honestly, I'd rather learn from other people than compete with them. Also, I come from a family of very talented people, and you cannot have pride when you're in that kind of situation, because there's always going to be somebody who's better at this or better at that, or does this really well or does that really well. So if you walk in just, wanting to be a showboat and just wanting to be the star of the show, maybe that'll work for a little while. But at some point or another, the tables will turn. And what then? I would rather support someone when it is their time to shine and celebrate with them and work on myself so that I can be the best version of myself, so that if that opportunity does come for myself to shine, we're all celebrating. Because when we all do well, that makes that joy last longer than when we're competing against each other and tearing each other down, and you can't even enjoy the little bit of success that you have.
That is an amazing attitude to have, and something that is so inspiring, and certainly something that we need to have more of in this world. And based on that, I'd love to know, if you were to give someone advice who's looking at you, and I'm now talking specifically about the stuff that you do with your video and with your photography and documenting your travels, how does someone get started in that field? How did you get started?
In photography and film? Or in biotech?
You started a video log and a website. How does someone get started?
I would say start where you are. I want to preface this by saying I'm not some huge, photographer. I'm definitely no Annie Leibovitz. And, I'm not out here, trying to act like I just won an Oscar for cinematography or filmmaking or anything. But I would say start where you are. What I've learned so far in my own personal journey is that don't worry about what everybody else is doing. If you're looking at what other people are doing, draw inspiration from it, not envy. Because you don't know what it took for that picture to come about. You don't know what that person had to go through. It might look like an easy breezy picture, but it may have been uber windy that day. And they may have almost fallen off a rock and cracked their skull, but then just in that little tiny moment, they were able to capture something really beautiful. So, look to other people for just kind of like a guide to find, like, when you're looking for your own look, when you're looking for your own aesthetic, when you're looking for what it is that you want to do, look around. Who do you admire? Whose work do you like to do? And then try to start where you are. If you have an iPhone, start with your iPhone and try to take the best pictures you possibly can on your iPhone while you save. You do the research. Okay, what kind of camera takes the best pictures, or the best kind of pictures I want to take in the future? Figure that out. And then while you're using your iPhone, save up for that camera. And then eventually when you do buy that camera, continue to work on your craft. You don't have to work on your craft on a public space. You can be doing that in private. And then one day you just put out this amazing video and people are like, where did this come from? You're like, well, I've been working on it for the last 5 years. And like, we didn't know. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's because I was doing it privately. So it doesn't have to be this like major thing. You can just start wherever you are.
And what would you say is the secret? What have you found is the secret to taking a great picture? Or some of the secrets, or some advice that you'd give for someone wanting to start out, and what you've learned about what makes a great picture?
I can definitely speak about what I've learned. I'm definitely not the authority on photography, but what I've learned is balance and interesting angles. The most important thing I learned most recently is also this, like, having a subject, having something to focus on. So if a picture is too busy, then, it's very difficult for someone to focus on one thing. If a picture is off balance, it's not aesthetically pleasing. I think that iPhones do a really good job on your camera of giving you the rule of threes, where it shows you a grid, and then just using that grid on your phone to just find balance in that picture. Those are the things that I've been learning more recently that I'm hoping to be able to apply to upcoming photographs.
And you talked about suggesting to people that, they figure out from people who take pictures that inspire them, figure out what kind of camera and what do you use?
I haven't, I'm fortunate. I have an iPhone 8 Plus, and I also use a Sony HDR CX900. That's what I generally tend to use for video, but I also have a drone, and I use my Mavic Pro. That's what I used most recently in my most recent travels. That's what I used the most was my drone.
You actually shot, as I say, I follow you on social media, and there was actually a more personal video that you shot, which I absolutely loved. It actually really reminded me of an advert that Apple did for their iPhone a few years ago about your family. I love that. Tell me what inspired you to do that video.
So with my sister and my brother-in-law, my niece is almost 2 years old, and this was the first Christmas where she was actively participating in opening presents. And the year that she was born, I made a video about just what it was like waiting for her. It was just, a minute-long video, showing my brother-in-law preparing her crib and my sister packing for the hospital, us getting to the hospital, all the family members who came in from out of town. And then finally, when she was born, and the celebration behind it. And that was mainly, one, to capture the moment, but because my father, whom we're all really, really close to, couldn't be there in person. So I wanted to capture those moments so that he could see them and he could still feel like he was a part of it. He would call, but just so that he could actively feel like he got to see that. And so with this Christmas, again, my parents were in Cameroon celebrating away from us. And I just wanted to create something that kind of captured those moments, those really intimate, personal moments of Christmas in Minneapolis that my niece was experiencing, with her dad cooking in the kitchen, playing with her mom, playing with toys, and just the whole. It's like it's really cold outside, but it's warm and toasty on the inside. That's what I was trying to communicate.
And that came across, it was truly beautiful. And I wanted to know, based on what you said earlier about finding people who inspire you and their work and analyzing their work, who inspires you? Or who are some of the people who inspire you?
I am definitely an Annie Leibovitz fan. I'm an Annie Leibovitz fan on that level. And then also, I most recently got a chance to meet an adventure photographer. I'm going to get back to that. But Jacques Cousteau, the scientist, who did more so marine biology. I think he inspired me from when I was very, very young. And that I think that's where like the travel and wanting to do film associated with it came from. And so actually the first travel film or short or vlog that I ever did was in Monaco at the aquarium where he used to be the curator. But he's another huge inspiration for me. I most recently got to meet part of a team. They do photography, but more like adventure photography and surf photography here in California. And I think the person from that team that I knew first was, or that I would watch their work and admire first, was Chris Burkhardt. And later on, I got to meet another guy on his crew, Ben Wieland, and their work is amazing. It's what I aspire to be able to do someday. It's different. It's a different aesthetic than what I do. I tend to prefer things that pop more in color, and their stuff is geared a little bit more to their aesthetic. But what they do really well is cinematography and direction of photography. It's amazing. So those are, like, I guess at different levels, those are the different people who I think do really great work.
So what we're going to do now is switch things up just a little bit, and we're going to do a really quick round of quick fire questions. So I don't want you to think about them, just literally the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you this question. Okay, so describe yourself in 3 words.
Oh, I'm probably going to pick a different one. Fearless or brave, either one. Cheerful and grateful.
When you hear the word successful, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Dad.
Favorite book?
The Count of Monte Cristo.
Favorite gift to give?
My time.
Favorite gift to receive?
A loved one's time.
Favorite thing about the place you live?
Flowers that remind me of my mother.
Your favorite item of clothing?
A jumpsuit that I got from one of my favorite Ghanaian companies.
What's your favorite time of day?
Morning.
Name 2 people you'd like to have dinner with.
Michelle Obama, Ava DuVernay.
Okay. Favorite meal or thing to eat?
My, wow.
You're not allowed to think about this, Eposi.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Favorite, I'm so sorry. Sushi.
Last great meal you had?
A tuna wrap and plantain chips from Trader Joe's. It sounds so simple
Trader
and weird,
Joe's.
but it was so good. Yeah.
Okay. What can't you get through the day without?
Food.
What's the screensaver on your phone or on your computer?
A picture of my parents.
Aww. Your favorite app?
WhatsApp.
Other than your phone and purse, what do you carry with you every day?
Earphones.
What's the favorite place you've ever visited?
Morocco.
Favorite song, or what would the theme song of your life be?
Theme song of my life would be Resilient. Something that had to do with resilience and coming through, pulling through.
What's your worst habit?
Overthinking things.
What do you wish you had more of in your life?
Nothing. I'm very happy with the way my life is.
And last one, what's a question you wish people would ask you?
How are you really?
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Eposi. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I appreciate the gift of your time.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you on social media?
They can find me on eposeed.com, or basically all my handles are EPLLESEED at Eposeed.
And we'll make sure to provide all of that in the notes to this show. Now, last question. This podcast is called the Ndini Podcast because Ndini in my language means I am. Finish that sentence. I am.
I am grateful.
You're amazing. Thank you. I am grateful to have been able to spend this time with you and that we finally connected. Thank you so much, Eposi. And I'm going to let you go, and thank goodness your phone held out, right?
Thank you. Oh, of course, I know. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me and getting to know me. So thank you.
You're phenomenal. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
grateful I got this time with you. Thank you so much, Eposi.
Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful
Thank
rest of the day.
you.
And best of luck with the new job.
Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful day yourselves.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Well, like I said during the interview, this girl can preach. My goodness, Eposi had so many words of wisdom. It's hard for me to pick any three things in particular that she said. But the things that struck out to me was she said, you've got to do what you love. It doesn't matter ultimately what other people think or what other people think you should be doing. It comes down to you doing what you love. Because as she said, if you do what you love, you will be successful. She also talked about failure and the role that it's had in her life and the fact that there really is no failure. As far as she's concerned, it's about learning. Everything that you do, whether you're successful or not, leads to you learning and becoming a better person. And something that Eposi said that really resonated with me was she said that we should never look at the work of others as a source of competition or as a source of envy. Rather, it should be a source of inspiration. She talked about how she looks at other people's profiles and she looks at other people's photography and other people's videos, and she uses that to inspire the work that she does. And speaking about work, Eposi has just put up a fantastically gorgeous video of her recent trip to Zanzibar. It's well worth watching. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ndini podcast. I don't take even a single listener for granted. As you know, my goal with this platform is to help shift and change the narrative on Africa, and in particular about African women. But I need your help to do that. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also follow us on SoundCloud. And please share. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. It helps me to bring great guests to the show, and it also helps others discover the podcast. And of course, I always want to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my conversation with our guest today and what you took away from it or what inspired you. I'd also love to hear from you if you have suggestions for other women you think I should absolutely have on the show. Our handle on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is @Ndini Media. Or you can reach out to me through our website, which is ndini.com. That's NDINI.com. Until next time, I'm Sandra Chuma. Be well.